Hello, good morning, year seven. We're going to start our lesson today with a quick starter activity. So I want you to do this now. The first question is a callback to last lesson. Who were the Rus? Question number one. Question number two. Complete the following sentence. Trade is the action of what and selling goods and what? Question number three. Blank was probably the biggest slave market in Western Europe. And question number four, goods were transported on the backs of blank across the desert. Fill them in. So pause, complete the sentences in full. Don't just write down the answer, full sentence, please. And you're ready to move on. Let's go through the answers. So, who were the Rus? The Rus were, of course, the Vikings. Question number two, trade is the action of buying and selling goods and services. So doing things for other people for money, that's a service. Question number three, Dublin was probably the biggest slave market in Western Europe. Question number four, goods were transported on the backs of camels across the desert, popularly known as the ships of the desert. Okay, your title for today. Why were some goods more important than others? Very simple title. We are now looking at the value and the rarity of certain goods that were bought and sold on the ancient Silk Road. That's your title. Please underline it. And today's date is the 14th of April 2020. Okay, neatliness is very important. Next, we've got a quote from our star historian for this inquiry, Peter Frankopan. And this is him just talking about the value of goods that were bought and sold on the Silk Road. So he said in his book, The Silk Roads, spices also began to flow to Europe from the east in increasing volumes. These reached three primary hubs, I should say. Constantinople, which is modern-day Istanbul, Jerusalem, which of course had huge significance in the Middle East at that time, and Alexandria, which is in Egypt, as you all know. It's an important Mediterranean port, good connection between the Middle East and Europe. So goods were, reached these three primary hubs and were then shipped to Italian communes. So from Constantinople, Alexandria, and Jerusalem, goods would go through places like Genoa, Florence, Pisa, Venice, and from there onto markets in Germany, France, Flanders, which is modern Belgium, and Britain. And this long journey would mean the price of goods would go up, and the merchants who were involved in the trade would make fat profits. So just make sure you understand that. Take some notes from that quote. We're ready to move on. So we were looking at some key definitions last lesson. Today we're going to just try to get to grips with the thing that allowed all of this to take place, which was currency. What is currency? Currency is the paper and coin money that a country uses to conduct business. If you remember that from last lesson, just get the key definition down. What are the characteristics of currency? It is exchanged for goods or services, of course. The value of currency can go up or down. Most countries have their own currency. Usually, a currency, particularly in the medieval and earlier period, was determined on people's confidence in the quality of the coin. So if a country was stable, people would respect that they had the right amount of gold inside their coins. And so you might find a coin that was really well respected being used and traded as a standard bit of currency hundreds of miles away. So if you want to Google, you can actually find a lot of the Viking Rus were buried with large amounts of Iraqi coins. Well, they're called Abbasid coins. That's an interesting place for you to go down because they did so much trade with the Middle East and because people valued the quality of their gold coins. An example of currency today, though, might be the pound sterling, the US dollar, the euro, etc. Okay, and a slightly more subjective term as well for us to look at today is avarice. I love that word, avarice. It's another word for greed, really. And a clear definition of it is it's an extreme desire for wealth. Now, Although we are appreciative of the Silk Road and the merchants and the administrators that built and maintained it, but if we're going to be honest, a lot of them were motivated by avarice, okay, the desire to gain riches, and sometimes engaging in unethical activities to increase their wealth. For example, slave trading. Right, what I'd like you to do now, if you open up the PowerPoint in our Teams folder, get to this slide, and then just click on the link. There will also be a video in there. Watch the video and then note down at least 4 examples of goods that were exchanged on the Silk Roads. So pause, watch the video, and give 4 examples of goods that were exchanged on the Silk Roads. Brilliant. Okay, now what you need to do is go to the Teams page again and open up this file here, what was traded on China's Silk Road. It's going to give you lots and lots and lots of examples of things that were bought and sold along the Silk Road. And then I want you to open up this file here, which is the table that you're going to put the information into. So read about the goods, then record on the sheet 2 examples of exports from China and 2 examples of imports from China. So for those of you that are not sure, an import is something that's brought in from abroad. An export is something that you sell. So for example, the UAE imports technology from Japan. However, the UAE exports oil and natural gas. Yeah, so things you bring in and things you sell. And then I want you just to have a think on these questions. What makes something important generally? What gives something value? It's a bit of a philosophical question, such an early time in the morning, but is it just to do with how much someone else wants it, or do things have inherent value, or do things have qualities which make them valuable to anyone? So, for example, is gold going to be valued the same way in one part of the world as it will in another part of the world? Some spices, for instance, sold for huge amounts of money. Pepper. Now, what's so special about pepper? We have pepper in our cupboards right now, and we don't give it a second's thought. But hundreds of years ago, people would have, sold everything that they had for, a small satchel of pepper. Killed people and risk their lives. So it's interesting. It's an interesting thing for us to think about. And then we're going to move on to some extended writing. Write that question down. Why were some goods more important than others on the Silk Road? And then just finish those sentences. Add a few more details yourself. Remember, the more detail that you include, better. You've watched the videos for 4th lesson on this topic. You should really now have a much better grasp of some of the key issues, and you should be able to pad out your paragraphs more expertly. Once you've finished that, I'd like you just to, of course, take a picture of your work or upload it onto the assignment that's been created for this lesson. Some of you last week took pictures of your work at the wrong angle and wasn't always clear. So if you could make sure that your picture is upright, so the right way up, and focused as well, so that we can mark your work properly. Okay, if you have any questions, please at me in the post. Good luck.